So very nice to meet you. Well, it sounds like we only have 20 minutes, a short amount of time, so I think we'll just start off really quickly and talk about you, and then we'll talk a little bit about my school, Dixon Elementary, and we'll just kind of talk about overall teaching questions and then probably just elementary specific questions.
Sure.
Does that sound like a good use of our time?
Yeah.
Great. So first of all, tell me a little bit about yourself, Liz. Why did you Teach for America?
Well, when I was in college, I was studying psychology.
Psych?
Yep. And one thing that always really interests me was child psychology and child development. And so the more classes I took, the more I really started to think about how children learn and how they grow and develop over the years. I heard about Teach for America on my campus, and I thought it sounded kind of interesting. So I went to an informational meeting, and when I learned that the mission was really to improve the life prospects of children in low-income or high-needs areas, it really sparked sort of a fire in me. And so the more I learned about Teach for America, the more I decided this was really the right way for me to fulfill my passion in terms of my interest about children and how they develop and how they learn, and match that with the passion that I do have for social justice. Because you may know, since you said you know a little bit about Teach for America, that as core members we're placed in the schools that children could really benefit from us most.
Yep.
And so I am just really interested in teaching children who really need me.
Awesome. And I'm pretty sure I understand this, but most Teach for America teachers, if not all, are not from a teaching background, an education background. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It is a pretty competitive program, so I'm really excited that I'm joining next year. But Teach for America recruits recent college graduates, but also career changers, and people who have had a record of leadership in the past, who are really interested in closing the achievement gap between wealthier children and children who may be underserved.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a top question. I'm here because a colleague referred me. And I was very interested in hearing about these young teachers making great gains with their kids. As a principal, you can understand gaining someone with not that much experience can be a liability or a risk on my part. Why do you think I should hire someone like you with no experience in the classroom over a seasoned veteran teacher? What do you think you bring to the table?
Sure. I think what's unique about Teach for America is really the training and support network. So pretty soon I'm going to be going to Institute for the summer, where I know that I'll receive a couple different courses that will really set me up to be very effective. So I know that I'll get specific training on classroom management, a lot of literacy and also math content knowledge, as well as the skills that I'll really need to plan effectively and put those things into place. So the Summer Institute would be one reason. The other reason is that once I'm in the classroom, I will have a support network behind me that I will be able to use to solve problems when they arise in the classroom.
Okay. About this institute, I've never heard of this before. Is this that 5-week training during the summer?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because 5 weeks does not seem that much time to train somebody to teach.
Yeah, you're right. It's not that much time, but I do know that our days are just maximized to every minute. So I'm really looking forward to just diving in and learning every single thing I can. But during Institute, I'll spend part of the day sort of student teaching and getting on-the-ground practice in summer school programs right here in Chicago, and actually teaching children. And the other part of the day, I'll spend getting this content knowledge and skills in the courses I told you about.
Okay. So just to clarify, are you lead teaching in that classroom?
I will be lead teaching at different portions during the day.
That's fantastic. And then during the night you have like pedagogical classes on classroom management, literacy skills, all those great things?
That's exactly right.
Wow. And you were talking about that support. There's a full-time staff member on Teach for America who's going to support you in your role at my school?
Exactly, yeah. That staff member is called a program director.
Okay.
And I understand that I'll be able to have my program director come in and observe me pretty frequently and provide me with feedback.
Okay.
My program director, I know, will also be someone who will sit down and help me analyze the classroom achievement data that I'll be collecting on my students. So I'm looking forward to those conversations in which we can really dig into exactly how are the students doing in class, and then what sort of decisions do I need to make based on how they're performing.
It sounds like you have a fabulous network of support. I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about how I could interact with this program director.
Sure. I know that program directors do check in with principals as well as any of the other sort of staff members that I might be involved with, if there's a dean or a literacy coach or other people at the school. And my program director will provide you with updates on how things are going, as well as sort of check in with you to see if there's anything else that you recommend.
Okay, that's great. So I knowing about Teach for America, I do know it's a 2-year program through which you're alternatively certified. What do you plan to do after 2 years? I mean, at Dixon Elementary, I'm going to tell you, we have a founding staff. 75% of my founding staff is still at the school. So we value our teacher retention a lot. And I'm just curious, would you be open? I know that it's a 2-year commitment, but would you be open to staying at my school beyond that 2 years?
I'm definitely open to it.
Okay.
Right now, my focus is really just gathering as much knowledge as I can to start off on the right foot the first day. And so I'm really looking forward to embarking on this journey. I'm not exactly sure what my future holds for me.
Who does?
But but I'm really hoping that this is something that I can continue to be invested in education in the long run.
Great. Fantastic. I've actually met a lot of alumni who are my fellow colleagues, principals. So that's very exciting. That's great. So obviously, as a CPS school, a lot of my job is to make sure that my students are on track to do well on a standardized test, the ISAT, every year. Can you tell me a little bit about how you would approach getting students ready for that exam, and making sure that they are growing every year, making sure that they are hitting our goals?
Definitely. I mean, I certainly understand that that is a bar that all my students just must be able to do well on. So I think I would do a couple of things. First, I would just need to be really familiar with the exam myself. So I would do the research on my end. I know there's practice exams that can be found online, as well as sample student responses and how they're scored. So that's the first thing I would do. After I myself am familiar, I would make sure that my plans for the entire year are set up to instruct my students in everything that they would need to know in order to perform well on the exam, which I understand comes up, I believe, in around March in the spring. And so I would align all my instruction up until that date. 2 other things that I would do is really invest my students' families in the exam and make sure that they truly understand what the exam is all about, as well as investing my students. So I think even on the first day, I would probably set a goal around ISAT so that my students know that everything we're working on is really sort of gearing us up to perform well on that.
Great, that's fantastic. I want to hear a little bit more about how you would involve parents in that investment. That's definitely important in my school. It's a requirement that all of my teachers reach out within the first month to parents and establish communication from the beginning. So could you talk a little bit about how you would invest families beyond that initial phone call?
Yeah, I think there would be 2 pieces to that. One, I would really want to get to know them. I believe that parents they know their child the best. And so I would want to hear from them, what is the sort of history of this child? What do they do well? What has the child struggled with? And getting to know the family on a personal level. And then the second thing I would want to do is be a source of information for parents in just being transparent about what's on the exam and how their child is performing in relation to that.
It sounds like your child psychology would be really helpful in some of these conversations.
I definitely think so.
Great. So I want to talk to you a little bit. You said you were interested in working in the low-income community. I do want to hear, since that is where my school is located and that is the population that my school serves, talking a little bit about the challenges that you might face in my school. One challenge that we do face is that there are problems at home, and some of the kids do bring those problems to our classroom. So behavior management is paramount in my school. That is the first qualification of a teacher that I'm looking at, is being able to get in front of a class and lead them to outcomes. That being said, how would you approach taking a class at my school and making sure that, number 1, all students are engaged, number 2, that you have a plan in place, a behavior management plan, if you will, to make sure that all students are on task and that there are consequences for student actions.
Well, I did some volunteering in college at the Boys and Girls Club,
Okay.
and so it was also in a low-income area, and I definitely encountered some of the challenges of just managing a group of kids. And what I learned from that is just essential is making sure that the kids know a really clear set of rules.
Yep.
What's okay and what's not okay, and then aligned to those rules, I would make sure that my students understand what are some of the positive things that they can earn when they really show great behavior, and then what are the very clear chain of consequences that are going to be put into place if they should choose to break a rule.
Yep.
I think along with that, like you said, making things really engaging, often I learned through my experience when the activities really involved the kids, and they were things that the kids liked doing, I had less management problems to begin with.
Okay. Great. This is a very service level question, but I just wanted to make sure I have an understanding. In terms of your certification, since I've actually never hired a Teach for America teacher, are you fully certified? How does that process work? Are you certified after your first year? I'm not quite clear on that.
We are certified from the first day that we step in the classroom.
Okay.
And the way that happens is through a combination of the training that we receive prior to starting the institute that I told you about. And then I'm going to also be attending graduate school classes at night,
Okay.
Which will help move my certificate through just the same stages that any teacher's certificate goes through, which I'm sure you're familiar with, provisional to the standard certificate. So for all essential purposes, I'm just as certified as any other teacher.
Okay. And you are paid not by me, by Teach for America, or does CPS pay for you?
No, actually, I would be an employee of Chicago Public Schools.
Oh, I see. Okay. I wasn't quite sure on that because I know Teach for America is a pretty large organization. So I would be paying your salary from the CPS budget.
That's correct.
Okay, understand. Sorry, just wanted to clear that up.
No, if there's anything else I can answer, I'd be happy to.
Okay. So one of the things that we really pride ourselves at Dixon Elementary is our planning. I ask each team to send in their lesson plans every week. And what we look for is very creative ideas in the lesson plans, but also a very tight structure. Kind of what you were talking about with your behavior management set. So what components are, in your opinion, are important in designing an effective lesson?
I really think that it all has to be aligned to your end goal or assessment. And so really the assessment for me comes first in planning, and I know that I will receive a lot more practice doing this in Institute because one of the things I'll have to do is plan for the students I'll be in front of, and I know I'll get a lot of feedback and development on those plans.
Yep.
But above all, the plan has to set them up to master the assessment that comes at the end.
Yep, absolutely. Assessment is very important. We actually require one formative assessment a week, and each of our teachers has to do an exit slip every day. So I'd be interested in also like how you plan to use that information, use those assessments to influence your teaching and how you approach teaching every day and your planning.
Sure. What I plan to do is daily when I'm collecting that exit slip that is designed to measure the objective from each lesson, I plan to look at those probably each evening to determine if I need to make any changes right away for the next day. So that would be sort of the day-to-day adjustments that I would make. But also, since you mentioned that you give formative assessments on a weekly basis, I would use those weekly assessments to see both on the objective level and then on the student level how things are going so I can make decisions. So what I mean when I say that is, are there any kids that are not doing well overall, and then I would make a specific plan for them. And then are there objectives that maybe all of my kids just aren't mastering, or everybody's maybe mastering a little bit too easy. So I would make decisions in both of those ways. Okay,
that sounds great. One thing that I found very difficult when I was teaching was the idea of differentiation. And at our school, unfortunately, our kids are at different levels. For instance, at the 4th grade, we might have kids who are at the 1st grade reading level. We might have kids who are on reading level. How would you construct a plan, or how would you approach your teaching with a classroom full of students who are on different levels, so that all students are moving forward?
Right. I think the first